Yeah, first, just want to thank ICI for putting on this great event. Really appreciate it, and thank you to the Snuneymuxw people for allowing us to gather on their unceded traditional territory. My name's Mark Saunders. I'm a manager at ISED in the Spectrum Policy Branch. I'm also a member of Chaging First Nation, which is located in Robinson-Huron Treaty Territory in Ontario. So I'm here today to present on Spectrum's access initiatives, including the Indigenous priority window. Thanks. So the purpose of the presentation, and I'll make sure to share this with everybody. You can get a copy after. It has some useful links in there as well. So to give you an idea of who we are, give you an overview of the draft Indigenous priority window, and also highlight a few other policies that might be of interest. Steve and Dara gave a great kind of intro to some of these, so I'll go into a little bit more detail on a couple of them. You're doing great, Jewel. So who we are. Again, Steve and Dara, thank you very much for doing a great kind of overview of what Spectrum is and what Spectrum management is. We have a few pictures up here that kind of give you an idea of some of the uses in everyday life. Obviously, as we know, our laptops, Wi-Fi, cell phone use, critical to everyday life, but also first responders use dedicated frequencies, air travel, and then that's supposed to be a remote highway. I don't actually know where that is, or even if it's in Canada, but that's the picture we went with. But connectivity on remote roads is, it's a public safety issue. So Spectrum is one of those things that is pretty niche, as Steve was saying. But, connectivity is coming more to the forefront, and Spectrum plays a key role in most networks at some point along the way. Yeah. So Spectrum management in Canada, like Steve was saying, the Department of Innovation, Science and Economic Development, where I work, is responsible in Canada to manage the radio frequency spectrum. So our overall policy objective for that is to maximize the economic and social benefits that Canadians derive from its use. It can be thought of as three buckets, essentially. So there's the planning phase, which we talked a bit about at the international level. And then the access phase, so that comes to the policies that my branch in particular works on. So licensing policies, auctions are a high-profile example of that, but there's other ways as well, like the non-competitive licensing framework that's fairly new, as well as the access licensing framework that I'll talk about a little later on. But also there's license exempt that doesn't require a license at all, and the secondary market, just as some examples. So once the policy is finalized, moves to compliance. So we have an operations team that has regional locations across Canada. They're kind of the field officers that investigate interference issues. They take measurements at sites to make sure the power that's emitting isn't over the health standards or safety standards as well. And they also issue licenses at the local level for a few of the spectrum bands. Okay. Sorry about that.
Is it better back there?
Is that better? Okay. Dealing with Jules' short mic here. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so I kind of covered these, but the Spectrum program at ISED is made up of 5 branches. Myself, I work in the policy branch in the middle, but we also have a research branch, the Communications Research Center, which is located in Ottawa in the West End. They do quite a bit of research and provide us with technical advice to inform policy. Next, we have an engineering branch, which is quite large as well. So again, they work at the international level to negotiate those frequencies and use cases, and provide our technical standards. The policy branch, again, I kind of already said this, but we develop licensing policy to provide access to the licenses themselves. The operations branch, I kind of covered that already. They're kind of the kind of enforcement compliance, but also issue licenses and have a more regional basis. There's district offices listed on our website that you can get in touch with, and they really have a kind of regional knowledge of the areas. Lastly, the funding. Sorry, I'll just quickly our rural funding program. So our Connected Canada branch. The main thing, I suppose, is the Universal Broadband Fund that some of you may be familiar with. So they're responsible for implementing our funding programs. The Universal Broadband Fund is the current or last one, but also they have digital inclusion programs, CanCode, digital literacy programs that they facilitate as well. So why is Indigenous access to spectrum important? I feel like I don't need to tell this group why. This is often a slide I use internally, but let's just these are kind of three of the main points. Connectivity gaps exist and are limiting Indigenous people's participation in the digital economy. The latest statistics show that First Nations households in Canada have access, or should I say 50% of First Nations households have access to high-speed internet, compared with 99.7% of urban households, and even 67% of general Canadian rural households. So there is a quantifiable gap. The gaps are, even larger in the north. So the need exists, and spectrum can play a important part of that, of providing services in those areas. The middle one, reconciliation, is a government-wide priority and responsibility. So it's really on every department. ISED, I suppose, isn't seen traditionally as a Indigenous department, but it is in all of our mandate letters, and falls onto each department to do what they can in their programs and policies to put an Indigenous lens on the work we do. Indigenous leadership has been calling on ISED to develop policies that are more inclusive, from consultations, accessibility of documents. I think Steve mentioned the complexity of a spectrum document. Outside of experts and larger telcos and lawyers, they can be daunting and difficult to digest. All the way up to the policies we put out. And enable access to the airwaves for Indigenous people. So that's kind of the main drivers, how we see it. This all kind of led to the creation of the Indigenous Spectrum Policy Team. Here we go. Yeah, these three good-looking people. We're all in the room today, so feel free to hit up Mariella and Arpit as well. They're sitting at the middle table. They'd be happy to hear from you. So in 2022, my former DG decided to kind of push for the creation of this group for kind of the needs or the drivers on the previous page, and just looking around the world as well as at what other countries were doing, like the FCC. So it was our time to kind of act. So it started with myself, and I spent kind of the first few months trying to get a lay of the land, and stumbled across an ICI connectivity summit in Winnipeg. So that really kicked off the work, and kind of opened my eyes to the community here, and all the great people that are kind of rallying around the need for better connectivity for Indigenous communities. We'll say, being in the Spectrum program for the last 15 years, it's been truly a great experience these last couple, being both a First Nations public servant and I guess a Spectrum lifer now. God. But so it's really a kind of an intersection of personal and professional interests. So then Arpit Mariella joined, and kind of our focus for the last year and a half. Actually, if you just want to flip to the next one there. Thanks, no worries. So our goal is to support high-speed internet to Indigenous communities through three different ways. So obviously improving spectrum access policy. We're a policy shop at the end of the day, so that's kind of our main focus. Actually, I won't say our main focus. I feel like engagement and relationship building is probably equally important. So a lot of engagement, relationship building, networking with everybody in the room here, getting to know the communities, the leadership, both at the regional, national level, as well as grassroots people that are doing the actual work themselves, and hearing their stories, and bringing that back to the department to communicate that up to senior management. Relationship engagement building. And then lastly, acting as a center of expertise for the Spectrum program. I almost don't like the word expertise in there, because obviously I'm not an expert on everything Indigenous, but it's more, so it's more acting as a, we support the other programs like our operations team, our engineering team, senior management as well with, we hold cultural competency sessions, as well as supporting individual requests, whether it's engagement advice, policy advice, or just how to make their documents less confusing. And if we don't have the answers, we connect them with people that do, or connect them with people in this room if need be, or our contacts across government. So the next few slides, there we go, the Indigenous priority window. So the main focus of our policy work has been this policy. Quick overview. So January 2024, so just over a year ago, we published 2 documents. So the first one is the access licensing framework. So this is it was initially consulted on in 2021, but the final decision was published last year. And what this does, as Steve was mentioning, unofficially coined the use it or lose it policy. So this makes spectrum that was previously licensed to predominantly larger telcos for decades in some cases. It looks at the areas that have been unused, and there are quite a few in rural, remote, Indigenous areas. So it takes those areas and it makes them available to new users. So it's a pretty significant policy, and within that, kind of a key piece was we made, or the minister at the time made the decision to apply an Indigenous priority window to licenses made available through that process, and indicated that the first spectrum bands would be the PCS and cellular. So that's 1.9 or 1900 megahertz and 800 megahertz. So those are the first 2 bands. So I know there's a new government coming in, a lot of change, but these decisions have already been made. And the fact the priority window is going to apply on all of those access licensing bands, that has been made too. So having said that, we also launched a document at the same time, the same day, January 2024, to engage on the criteria around the window itself. So the 2 big ones, eligibility, who should be considered eligible for this, and the duration of the window. We also took the chance to kind of open a broader conversation around other things like engagement, conditions of license more broadly, and policy objectives. Yeah, thanks. So this is just a quick slide on the first licenses that will be available. So a preliminary look shows there's 701 licenses across Canada. It's not everywhere, but they're in most rural, remote, Indigenous communities. And one key difference from the FCC tribal priority window is that these aren't these aren't limited by the community boundary. In a lot of cases, several communities are within that area, as well as non-Indigenous municipalities, mines. Some cases, there's upwards of 10, 11 communities. So the further north you go, the bigger they get, as you can kind of see from that tiny Canada map. But so I think it represents some opportunity to not only deploy a network to your community, but take advantage of the areas outside of it as well. Other key pieces, so these are 3-year licenses. Tier 5 just means the area size I just described. There is a deployment condition of one station per 10,000 population. And you have 3 years to do that. There is a fee associated with this, so that differs from the FCC process as well. I will talk about our recent fee framework that we published, which greatly reduces the fee. It's not down to zero, unfortunately, but most of these licenses will be available for $250, so dollars. Bucks isn't professional, sorry. $250. So it is, it's something, but it's an administrative cost. Yes, very good, Phil. Thank you. So quick on the engagement. So we did try to. So first, we did publish a pathfinding website. There's a QR code at the end of this if you want to check it out. We have some kind of Spectrum 101 information there as well. Links to table of key dates. There's a virtual map you can look at with that'll show licenses and where they are. You can kind of zoom in and search by Indigenous community. We launched a 6-month engagement, so typically ISED does 1 to 3 months. So we doubled it, and then we extended it to 8 months after requests from some of you. 5 in-person events. So we tried to do as much face-to-face as we could. Obviously, budget constraints didn't allow for as many as we wanted, but we tried to go to 5 and spread them out across Canada. Whitehorse, BC, Manitoba, Nova Scotia, and Ontario. Met a lot of great people. Seemed to be a lot of interest, and also held many virtual sessions as well. We did get 29 comments. This may seem low to some of you, but to put it in perspective, I think our fee framework, which was a pretty big one, got 12. I know, of course, we'd want to see many more. We talked to hundreds of people and encouraged it, but definitely ways we can improve, and we heard some great ways we can improve. But I think as a starting point, it was great, and I know there's other priorities for communities that are more important to responding to a consultation like this. But hopefully, with more awareness and more capacity building as time goes on, we'll see those comment numbers rise. And thank you to everyone that did take the time to submit comments. We really appreciate it. Yeah, that's good. So that's fine. So what we heard, so this is kind of the big question, applicant-based. So there's different ways we could go. I know in the U.S. they went with, they went to the community directly, and probably because the boundaries were right around the community lands. We suggested applicant-based, so focus on, is the applicant Indigenous? We also put forward a community support base. Does the applicant have the support of the community? And lastly, project-based. Is the project Indigenous-led and benefiting? So those were the 3 we put on the table. And then said, if there's something else, please let us know. What we heard on eligibility, so generally the support was split between applicant and community support. Kind of right down the middle, to be honest. Other themes we heard were the need to reduce administrative burden, be flexible with the criteria, create an accessible process that's easy to understand, not overly burdensome on the communities themselves. Encourage community participation. support partnerships between Indigenous groups and non-Indigenous groups. And also, in terms of the applicant-based, I think we listed the Indigenous Business Directory that's run by Indigenous Services Canada as an example. And we heard some feedback that that one's okay, but maybe don't limit it to that directory solely and include some Indigenous-led directories. Sure, thanks. Window duration, so this one we proposed 12 months for the window itself. Some respondents agree, and the 12 months was to kind of balance enough time to get people to apply, with also not delaying the deployment of the spectrum too much. Comments were kind of split. Some asked for longer, more flexible timelines, up to 24 months, 5 years, based on the varying levels that communities are at in terms of applying for a spectrum license. So another question we asked was around measuring success. How can the IPW be applied in the future, and whether other measures should be implemented by ISED? So we got a lot of great feedback on this one. Tracking the people that are interested, not just number of applications, license issued, of course, customers served, geographic areas, to kind of tell the story of the IPW itself. We heard that the IPW should be a long-standing policy and apply to a much wider range of spectrum. Communities and providers in most cases, or many cases, need a whole suite of spectrum, low band, high band, mid band. We're starting with PCSL, but as I said, the access licensing framework is going to start applying to more bands, and a priority window has been ingrained in that policy decision going forward. The need for smaller license areas, more spectrum for backhaul, better mechanisms for subordinate licensing. Funding, of course, was a huge thing we heard, and the desire for spectrum over urban Indigenous areas and not just in these rural, remote areas. Last but not least on here, the kind of a theme across most submissions was to step back and acknowledge Indigenous people as rights holders and recognize spectrum sovereignty. On conditions of license, so just kind of quickly, we asked a question around, how can our conditions of license better reflect Indigenous priorities? Longer license terms that align with funding programs. Fees was a big one. Most said no fee should apply to this, or if there is a fee, it should be small, and a small portion should go back to the communities to support building out networks. Deployment requirements need to be based on geography rather than just a percentage of population. So on engagement, we asked how can we engage better? More accessible communication methods. So this was our first attempt at this, but we got a lot of great feedback, and hopefully the next time we can improve on that. Direct mailing, so physical mail-outs, more webinars, and kind of ongoing face-to-face communication channels. So coming to events like this. Also, we have started a quarterly virtual call that I think many of you are on, but if you're not, reach out and we can add you to it. It's co-chaired by Bill, where's he sitting? Bill's putting on another hat, and he agreed to co-chair it with us, so it's not just us. And we're open to talking anything spectrum and giving kind of regular updates on initiatives and what's going on in the department. We had one in December, and it was fantastic, and I think we had about 80 people on the call, so it was great to keep the conversation going. More face-to-face conversations, of course. Yeah. So what happens next? I think I've mentioned to many of you, but we fully intended to have a much punchier announcement today that unfortunately didn't happen. So we're just recapping what we heard. we ran into, we were running up against political change in Ottawa. But all that to say, we're kind of working on the approval process, and we hope to publish the IPW as soon as we can. The quarterly meetings are going to continue, so please let us know if you're interested. We'll update our website and our pathfinding website with key dates once we can announce things, and we'll send it out to our distribution list as soon as we publish anything. So please reach out and get on that list too. That's kind of what happens next on the IPW. We have a QR code for our website, but also we can share this deck with everybody after as well. It's still going. Sorry, there's more. So, just a few more slides on some other initiatives that I'll cover quickly. I feel like I've been talking a while, but. Oh, geez. Sorry. So the non-competitive local licensing that Steve he mentioned several times. So this is separate from the IPW, but it's one we're pretty excited about as well. So this policy is finalized. It's out. So what it is basically, it's more of an automated way for spectrum management. There's an online tool that's in beta mode, and it's going to go live in the very near future. So you'll be able to go online, look at a map, circle an area that you want to acquire a license for, and it's very localized. So I was speaking about tier 5s before that included many communities. This is as small as, I think you can go down and circle a few houses. Don't quote me on that, but it's really small. So campuses, university campuses, mines, Indigenous communities, it's super localized, and it's all online. So the first band that's going to be made available is the 3900 band. So there'll be 20 megahertz licenses available across Canada. It's not just rural remote, it's everywhere. The pathfinding website for that one is right there as well. So it's going to go live. I can't say exactly when, but fairly soon. Second to that, so we made a decision recently around millimeter wave spectrum. So first it'll be the 3900 band in this framework, and then there's a pile of millimeter wave stuff going in there too. So there'll be two different frequencies available there, mid and high, and with the IPW, that'll kind of give you the low. So there's good things coming for small and community-based networks in terms of spectrum access, I think. We'll go to the next one here. Fees, as I was saying, this was a decision made a couple weeks ago as well. Our spectrum fee review has been something that's been worked on for quite some time at ISED. So we came out with a 3-tier fee system. If you're a small and medium business, generally the third tier, the lowest tier, will apply to you. These bands see a substantial decrease. So to give an example, the first IPW licenses would have been roughly $1,200, in some cases upwards of $6,000. So this new framework brings those down to the base rate of $250. Next slide. Yeah, another one that I think was mentioned by Dara, the supplemental mobile coverage by satellite, or SCMS. Sounds like a ship. It was announced last month as well. So what this is, it's a technical policy that will allow mobile network operators to enter into agreements with satellite operators to enable direct-to-device connectivity. So current mobile telcos can enter into an agreement with the satellite provider, and in the areas where they don't have a terrestrial network built out, the satellite will be able to speak to your current cell phone. Right now, the use, as I understand, is pretty limited, but it has the potential to be a pretty big game changer, like Dara was saying. And those dead spots on remote rural highways, remote Indigenous highways, you'll now be able to text or call somebody, so something like that, the potential to save lives, and it's a pretty big one. Lastly, the millimeter wave consultation. So basically, the millimeter wave conversation, I should say, has been kind of a lengthy one. So this is another addendum to the millimeter wave auction. So essentially what it's asking questions on, should we add more spectrum to the auction? It also announced the adding of spectrum to the non-competitive local licensing framework. It's also asking if we should auction all of it across Canada or just in the urban areas where demand might be higher, and then do something different with the rural pieces of it. So that's open right now. Comment period closes May 5th, so or the initial comments with reply comments June 4th. So if you'd like to voice your opinions on millimeter wave spectrum, I encourage you to submit those. Okay, we made it. Miigwech, thank you, merci. Happy to answer questions. And yeah, thank you for allowing me to speak. Oh, thanks.
Do we have a question? I can run the mic.
And it's on. Okay. It's on.
Oh, ow. Sorry. Madeline Redfern. So quick question, because we know there's been issues regarding the Indigenous ownership of certain companies. You know, ISED, the Indigenous Services Canada, actually was doing an audit, and then they suspended their audit after they removed approximately 180 companies, and there's actually a lot more. So what sort of process is ISED doing with respect to sort of knowing, you know, is this a legitimate Indigenous company? And also supplement to that, what do you do when there's a conflict between the Indigenous company applicant and the, you know, the community that actually is challenging it? Is there an appeal process to say, like, hey, that's, you know, a shell company, it doesn't have, you know, legitimate Indigenous ownership management and all those things that ideally is supposed to come with this preferential consideration?
Yeah, no, great question. Thank you, Madeline. So I can't really get into what we're going to do because that decision's not finalized, but I will say, you know, we've seen the articles on the business directory and ISK, and it's been in the news for, you know, quite some time now. So that's definitely something we're very aware of. So we are, you know, we did hear feedback that, you know, maybe we should rely on Indigenous owned and run directories, modern treaty directories. We did want to rely on directories that, you know, or I should say, ISED didn't want to necessarily get into defining indigeneity itself. In government, we have Indigenous Services Canada, there's CERNA, who have definitions around these things. So we didn't want to kind of deviate from those definitions, but we are, you know, we are very cognizant of the issues with the IBD, and we are looking at, you know, other ways to apply the applicant model, whether that's, again, relying on business directories run by modern treaties, by regional Indigenous governments or Indigenous organizations, rather than the ISK directory or in combination with it. I hope that kind of answers a bit. Not all the way, I know.
So we still have about like 8 minutes for questions, so prepare yourself, Mark.
All good.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Mark, for your presentation. It was very informative, and I always enjoy your honesty about certain things when you can talk and when you can't.
Thank you.
Here's one that I do want to ask you to think about, though, is one, public education in terms of First Nations and how we are trying to govern and how provincial governments are not working well with the federal government to make that messaging work. How do you measure your success in the communications and the packages and all that good work you're doing with your counterparts in provinces where they've got other mandates that They don't see First Nations as a priority on their agenda. And I could frame it another way. In terms of the federal government, what are you doing in terms of economic reconciliation, Truth and Reconciliation Commission, action number 92? And do you have any kind of feedback from your federal government on Truth and Reconciliation, again, the call to action number 57? Could you care to comment a bit about that? Thank you.
Okay, great question. I'll see how I can do responding to it. In terms of sharing what we're doing with our provincial partners, I know the BC government's here. We do have a network of calls we go on and we speak to the work we're doing and we share it with them. When it comes to priorities and setting priorities at the provincial and federal level, I think I will say I haven't run into a case where we're not kind of on the same page saying, Indigenous connectivity, rural remote connectivity is important. I think that's widely accepted across governments and it's, it's a critical need for everyday life. So I feel like those priorities are shared. In terms of reconciliation across government or internally at ISED, and the Truth and Reconciliation report, you quoted some numbers, and I don't necessarily have them memorized. But if you want to elaborate on which one specifically.
So just to recap, number 57 is public servants need to learn about Indigenous worldview. Number 92 is economic reconciliation.
Okay, thank you. So I'm in the Spectrum Policy Branch, and leading a Indigenous Spectrum policy team. We're here. We do as much as we can to raise issues, raise the importance of reconciliation across the Spectrum program and also across the department. So we've organized calls across ISED. One of the first things we did when this team was created was we wanted to know, okay, so what exactly is going on at ISED in terms of Indigenous policy programming and reconciliation? So that was an adventure in of itself, and there was things going on, but there wasn't really a kind of coordinated discussion. So we did. We started a monthly call, and it's still going with all of the other pockets across ISED that are doing work in terms of Indigenous engagement, policy programming. ISED is an enormous department, and that could be a whole nother presentation. I think before the shakeup, we had 4 to 6 ministers with different responsibilities across. We have our innovation, we have industry, we have economic development, small business, but there's a lot of people doing a lot of good work in their worlds at ISED. There's an Indigenous tourism team, there's Indigenous IP work that's happening. We have a reconciliation hub that does some internal work as well and supports small business or Indigenous small businesses. So all I have to say is I can't speak to what's in the hearts and minds of senior management or the upper echelons, but I can say there's a lot of good people doing a lot of good work in different areas. So that's kind of under the umbrella of reconciliation. It's in our department's mandate letter now. Hopefully a new government comes in and the language around reconciliation is still in there as well. We'll keep doing this work for sure. And we'll see. In terms of cultural competency by public servants, so we have held several sessions. We've gotten contractors to come in, Indigenous leaders to come in and hold sessions for senior executives. We've done a couple. We should probably do another one soon. There is an Indigenous Employees Network at ISED that I'm a member of. I'm also ISED's Indigenous Career Navigator, which is kind of provides support to Indigenous employees at ISED and also looks to increase Indigenous representation among our ISED employees. So that's kind of another part of my job. Sorry, Jewel, go ahead. Yeah, so I don't know. That's kind of my answer to that. As kind of where we stand now.
So we have one more question because lunch is in the room.
Just quickly, so as I understood, with this priority window, there in any specific company of indigenous company could ask for a spectrum assignment in the 900 and 850 for a specific area. And my question if it's possible that yes, some indigenous body could ask for that and then allocate to different companies within the territory or the area.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the access licensing licenses are non-transferable for the reason we wanted the unused portions to go to people that are going to use them. Having said that, it doesn't disallow partnerships. So, for instance, even if we went with an applicant model where, okay, is this an Indigenous applicant? Under the applicant model, First Nations community themselves could still apply for the license. And they could either build it out themselves or they could, there is a way, to work with partners, non-Indigenous partners to, for example, build the infrastructure and even maintain it, as long as that community maintains control of the license and license decisions. That's also a possibility. So, under the applicant, it's not, I mentioned just the businesses because most instances it's an incorporated company or a business that's going to apply, but it doesn't disallow, band and council or Métis government or even an Indigenous individual to apply. So, I hope that answers your question. I'm not sure. Thank you. Is there? That's it. Okay. Oh, do you have one, Kristen? Okay. Do you have one more? No. Okay. All right. Happy to talk more about this throughout the day, and feel free to come see me or my team. Thank you.